Hi there, I'm Sara, a portrait and wedding photographer and your host for Wedding Secrets Unveiled. This is a podcast where we cut through the complexity of wedding planning, leaving you with everything you need to know direct from the industry experts. If you want to simplify your wedding planning, while having fun, of course, you came to the right place. Join me while I guide you through your planning, starting from your engagement to your big day where you say, I do. After photographing for the past 18 years, I am sharing with you tips and tricks to cut through the excess noise because I believe from the moment you said yes, your planning experience should be a magical time in your life. Here you'll find episodes that are fun, stress-free, and straight to the point, with a fresh, honest take about the reality of what you really need to know about planning your perfect day. Let's dive in. Welcome back to Wedding Secrets Unveiled podcast, friends. So today's episode, we are going to be speaking with Emily Murray from Something Borrowed Event Decor. She's the owner of her own signage company that she started in 2021. What we're going to be talking about today will be exactly that, signage at your wedding. But exactly where should you start? Who should you hire? Should you do it on your own? And some tips and tricks about the logistics of signage. Emily is going to talk about everything from things to think about in regards to installation of signage, if you do it on your own or whether she does it for you. She's also going to talk about trends that she's seen, places to put signage. So if you are somebody that's just starting to think about how to jazz up your wedding, this will be the podcast episode for you. Whether you're doing it on your own or you have a signage company, or if you haven't even thought about signage yet, this definitely is a must-listen episode. So sit back, relax, and enjoy my conversation with my friend Emily. Well, hello, Emily.
Hi, Sara. How are you?
I'm doing awesome, and I just love seeing you sit in front of me.
I know. A long time.
We have a journey, of how we met, and I just love the fact that I have you sitting in front of me because I've also watched your journey of your business.
Thank you.
Yes, I'm so happy for you, and congratulations. And for the viewers, I have a great treat for you. Emily and I met... Well, how old's your daughter now?
She'll be 6 in April.
Oh, geez. So 5 years ago.
Yeah.
God, 5 years. So, yeah, tell our listeners how we met.
So ever since I started having kids, I have a 6-year-old and a 3-year-old. My aunt has always wanted to gift us more of memories for them than the toys and the junk that can load up your house. And so from day one, she's gifted us photo experiences. And for my daughter's first birthday, she gifted us a cake smash photo shoot with Sara. And I went to her studio at her house, and it was absolutely beautiful. We had the best day playing in all kinds of florals and bubbles and just pictures that I've captured for now a lifetime because of that first meet with you.
Yeah, and I just love the fact that your aunt does that. She, I just think it's so special that she gives you the gifts of memories and you gone to my fairy session, so it's been really fun. But with that said, we got connected through your daughter, but I actually watched you because I met you before you got into the wedding industry.
Yep.
I watched you birth your business.
I know. It was I remember when I first started, I thought, I wonder if Sara will ever photograph one of my weddings someday. And I didn't know if that would, ever come to fruition. And then it did. This past October, I got to see you down in Newport, shoot a beautiful wedding. And even since then, I get inquiries in that have you listed as the photographer. And it's such a full circle moment for me. Really makes it feel like we've come so far from, photo shoots to now real wedding days.
Absolutely. All right, Emily. So with that said, let's talk to our viewers about who you are, who you serve, and what you do.
Yeah. So I started initially first out of college working in corporate events, and as much as I loved the creative aspect, with corporate, there wasn't a whole lot of the creative side. It was a lot of more the politics, computers, stuff like that. And I always had a heart for weddings, but I was a little wary for working weekends until I lost my job during the pandemic, December 2020, almost 2 years ago. And at the time, I had a side hustle going of making some home decor signs, but weddings were always where my heart really was. So I took a mentorship program back in January of 2021, and 3 months later launched Something Borrowed Event Decor, where we rent out custom signage for weddings in Rhode Island, Massachusetts, and Connecticut. Usually specializing in mirrors, acrylic, wooden items, but now we've really thrown into this world of custom build installations for couples looking to really go all out for their wedding weekends.
All right, so Emily, you say custom installation. So for our listeners, what is that exactly?
Yeah, so signage can be something as simple as, something you're printing on poster board or something that we custom build for the day of. So what we really specialize in is creating either seating charts, welcome signs, those kind of Pinterest-worthy moments that take your wedding from a beautiful day to a really memorable one, where your guests will go through and say, this is so them. This is a big representation of you as a couple, and for us that usually lies in backdrops, seating charts, escort displays, your bar signage, little elements like that tie together for a cohesive wedding.
Now, I've also seen your husband popping around.
He is, yes. Just this past April, my husband came on board full-time with me.
Ooh.
Very exciting. It was, a dream for us for kind of from the get-go, but it happened a lot sooner than we could have expected, and it's been great. We work together now full-time, and he does all of the building while I do all of the designing and communication with our clients.
Wow. So you really did a lot in the past 18 months.
Yes. It'll be 2 years in April since we first started. Our first year we did just under 100 weddings, and this year we did almost 200. So a lot of fast experience under our belts to get into this industry.
So obviously there is such a need then.
There's a huge need for it because I think more and more people are really investing their time and money into full wedding experiences where they have people in their families and friends traveling in from all over the country to attend these weddings. And a lot of the time it becomes a full weekend experience for them, from rehearsal dinner to next day brunch where they send off. And a lot of those events need signage and other elements to help the flow, and also just to create a really cool experience for your guests to have this weekend together where they get to celebrate you.
So I got a question for you. There's so many avenues and so many ways that we can take today's show. I guess I'm going to flat out ask you, what do you want our listeners to know about signage?
I want them to know that even if it's not at the top of your priority list, it's still important for your guests. And if it's at the top of your priority list where you love decor and you love those extra personal touches and elements, you should invest into those areas. But if you don't have the budget to do that, there are plenty of ways that you can do it on your own or through different Etsy shops to create a cohesive look for your guests and get the look that you're going for, whether it's through a signage vendor where you're doing a full custom suite of signage and items, or if you're going through the DIY route of doing it yourself.
So if you're a listener, right, and you're just sitting here and you just tuned into the episode and you're, know someone's getting engaged or you're someone that's getting engaged, where do they even start?
So I think the first place to start is Pinterest. I always ask one of the first questions on my inquiry form on my website is, do you have a Pinterest board or a mood board? And something like that, whether it's something you're sharing with other vendors or something you're using for yourself when you're looking, will really help you to kind of see what you like. Once you start your Pinterest board, you can see trends of if you're pinning a lot of mirror welcome signs and seating charts, then that's something that you should look into, is maybe finding antique mirrors through thrift stores or finding a local vendor to you that subs out and rents out these mirrors for you to use on your wedding day. If you're pulling a lot of more rustic wooden pieces, then maybe that's the route for you to go. So I think starting there with your Pinterest board to see the types of textures and colors and looks that you like. And then the next stop would be looking into if there's a signage vendor into your area, or looking onto Etsy if you want to try to piecemeal things that way. If you do that, I always recommend sticking with the same shop through Etsy for all of your pieces. That way you have a cohesive look. And sticking with the same fonts and colors throughout all of these pieces, because it really ties them all together. And that way your guests see the same elements through, even starting with your stationery, all of your invitations leading up to the day of, or if you're having a welcome party, having the same fonts throughout all of those pieces really ties it all together and creates a cohesion for your guests.
Okay, Emily, so that's great and all, but what happens with the actual day of installation then for people who are doing it on their own?
That's a huge part of it. I would say a majority of our couples trust us and go with us because of the experience we have of on the day of bringing all of these items to life. Whether it's transporting, most of them require a U-Haul or some kind of large SUV or van to deliver and install on the day of. We bring all the tools with us, the extra paint colors. Anything that can go wrong on the day of, we're responsible for, and it's one less thing that our couples have to think about.
And you know what else? Nowadays, for our listeners, a little inside tip, a lot of these venues are asking us to show insurance if you're coming on site. So you may think that someone that you know can bring an installation, because obviously you're not bringing it to your wedding. It doesn't mean you can't do it yourself, but you have to talk to these venues to see if they're even going to allow like a friend to come on site.
And you even have to make sure that your venue is able to fit and house the items that you're looking to bring in. A lot of the times when we're in more urban city locations for venues, the load-in isn't always ideal. We've had a hard time fitting large mirrors or large pieces into cramped hallways, elevators. If your venue is, if you're getting married up on the 10th floor of a beautiful Boston venue, that's beautiful, but we might have a hard time getting in these oversized pieces that you're looking to have on the day of.
Yeah, so there's a lot of logistics when it comes to doing it on your own. So sometimes, like you said, not only are you helping people with the design, but you're also helping them with the installation and all the logistics of the venue. But if they want to do it on their own, you already gave us some great tips. Stick with the fonts, all being the same, and talk with your venue about actual delivery.
And also the breakdown of it as well. A big part of our business is that most of our products are rentals. So we return the next day to break down all these pieces and take them back. So our couples don't have to worry about where to house them after the wedding or reselling them after the fact, just trying to find a place for them in their homes. It's something that we come back the next day and break down and pick up everything, so you just get to go enjoy your honeymoon. One of the biggest aspects of our job in the weeks leading up to the actual wedding day is figuring out with these venues when we can get into setup. Some of these larger installs take us 2-3 hours to set up on the day of your wedding. That's time that you don't have on the day of your wedding and your family doesn't have to set up. Then figuring out those logistics of when we're coming back to break down. Sometimes it's right in the middle of the night at the end of these weddings. Sometimes it's the very next morning. And if they have another event going on, maybe a brunch or a bridal shower, we have to make sure that all of our pieces are picked up and out of there before those events need to start getting set up, which is a huge plus to hiring out a vendor. That way you don't have to worry about getting these pieces in or out by yourself.
Yeah, and I think it's also too important is that people need to understand that, you can do all of this. I mean, a lot of times, a lot of you guys are listening, you're planning your wedding anywhere from 6 months to 2 years, so you have the time, but it's the actual execution because, believe it or not, there's so many rules at a lot of the venues, and you would be surprised about some of the rules. And a lot of these people, they don't set it up for you.
Right.
And if they and if they do, then again, they run into the issues of like, do they have everything that they need to set it up? Or they might not know where it's all going to go. And also, too, you're really worried. So if you are going to do everything on your own, definitely, like Emily's saying, you need to think about the logistics before and after. Or if you're traveling, Emily, like what do you do with people who are traveling and like doing destination weddings?
Right. Many couples are opting to travel for their weddings, whether it's flying all their family and friends out from East Coast or West Coast to the other side. Because of that, you have to bring everything for your wedding the day of. And we have couples traveling from all over to get married in Newport, Rhode Island. And those couples, more than anything, are the ones asking, do you have a card box? Do you have table numbers? Do you have a reserved sign for my ceremony so my family knows that this row's for them? Like all those little details that you think, I can just grab, or those are things that make up a suitcase when you're traveling for weddings like this. And so we always try to cover all of our bases and have extra details and things that our couples might need if they're traveling from out of state.
Also, too, I would think that a lot of the time, if you are doing signage on your own versus hiring someone like yourself to do it, it might relieve a little of the headache because I would assume some of these things are last minute.
Definitely. We get a lot of last minute requests of people that, I wasn't thinking about my seating chart until now, and now it's 2 weeks before the wedding, and it has to be designed and made, and it's based on your guest count that you have at 2 weeks before the wedding. You can't, as much as you might want to prepare in advance a seating chart, you don't know 4 months out who's attending and who can actually be there on the day of and where they'll be sitting. Oftentimes, your venue might not know the full bar menu that they'll have available until just a few weeks before the wedding. So when we design your pieces, we're updating them with the current head count, with the current menus, with all of those last-minute details that can change based on availability.
So basically, moral of the story is if you are going to do it on your own, follow just a lot of just in your mind, not only create it, but go through the logistics of getting it there and removing it, and also too spell checking.
Yes.
And knowing that you are going to be doing a lot of things last minute right before your wedding.
Yes, definitely. Especially when it comes to things like the seating chart or even table numbers. You can estimate that you'll need 12, and then if you have a large group of people that RSVP last minute, hey, we can make it, you could have a whole extra table to add, which is a whole extra set of menus, an extra set of table numbers. You might remember to contact your florist and add an extra centerpiece or add an extra set of chairs to your reception, but you could forget things like getting that last table number that you need. And by using a vendor, you have someone the week of that we can add an extra table number the week of your wedding if you need it. Or let's say last minute, the venue doesn't have all the ingredients they need to make your signature drink, and you have to decide something else to do instead. That's something that we can take the stress off of you the week of the wedding when we're actually bringing all these pieces to life by doing them in real time right before you know exactly what you need. Beyond the logistics of transporting these pieces in and out of your venue, the most important thing is keeping them safe throughout the day. Whether when we come to set up, it's usually in the early afternoon, well before anything has started. My goal is always to be completely wrapped up and out of your venue 1 hour before your guest arrival time. So if your ceremony is starting at 5, but you've asked your guests to arrive at 4:30, I'm out of there at 3:30. I want to make sure when they arrive, everything looks perfectly as it should and is set up. But I also want to make sure that it lasts through your ceremony, your cocktail hour, your reception, all of those pieces. And especially if you're having an outdoor wedding, that can be tricky with the elements. So we always come prepared with, if we're using easels, we stake those easels into the ground with even garden stakes that you can just grab off Amazon or your local Home Depot. Then for larger installations, we use sandbags to secure them in the back. That way we know if we're adding, 150 to 200 pounds on the back of these pieces, they're not going anywhere even through the wind. So it's just something to keep in mind, whether you're DIYing or if you are finding a signage vendor local to you, make sure that they're prepared to bring those items as well and make sure that these pieces are secure through the day.
It's so funny, Emily, because for my own wedding, I did a lot of these projects on my own. Mm-hmm. Being in the wedding industry, I've seen it, and, I wanted to do it. It was something fun.
It is fun.
Yeah. And I'm a creator, so I wanted to put my heart and soul into my own wedding, which I'm sure a lot of the listeners, if you have the talent, they can do it themselves, or if they want to, bring life to their wedding, they can hire you. But on my own wedding, I did things myself. Mm-hmm. And, you do all this stuff, right? You put your heart and soul into things. Sometimes I remember it's like before I had kids, so I had all the time in the world. I'll be sitting watching TV and I'll be making my signage or keeping busy. Yeah. Great, right? All fine and dandy. However, it's funny because when you're doing these items, they are very small items that make a big impact of your wedding, right? So I look back at some of my photos of my own wedding, and there's a couple things that bother me. Mm-hmm. And it's exactly what you're saying. I made a sign to go on an easel, and I had an outdoor wedding. Mm-hmm. Well, I didn't think about the elements of the wind. Mm-hmm. So obviously my event coordinator, she helped me out, and she set it up, and she did the best she could by securing it. And they clearly, I couldn't see what they did, but they put fish twine to secure the sign on the easel. However, the easel itself must have been falling. So in my pictures, I see these big boulders. Mm-hmm. Now, it's not their fault because it's either the signage falls or you put something there. Mm-hmm. Big boulders. I wish in hindsight I thought about the installation, and what I could have done is get like a florist to hide with flowers the boulders, or maybe we could have had a different type of easel secure in the ground, and things I'm sure because you do all this. But my point is, for those who are listening, you spend so much time doing it all on your own that just take it from me, it bothers me. I look back at some of my cocktail hour pictures and I see these big boulders underneath my easel, and I'm sure no one else sees it, but I do, and I'm like, oh,
yeah,
it's like the installation portion.
Even just creating things to scale. I've had some times where someone will request like an unplugged ceremony sign for their ceremony and ask for it to be very small. And my initial concern is, well, your guests won't notice it if it's too small. If we have it just on a small table at the entrance, they're going to breeze right by and look for their seat. Where if you have something that kind of creates a moment for your guests, it even a lot of times ends in those Instagram picture people stop and take a selfie with it, because it creates a moment for them where they really get to take in the beauty of it. They see the first kind of token of what to expect for the day, of what your wedding will look like. And that's why when you're working with a signage vendor, we can recommend different sizes for you, different mediums that we know might be a better fit at an outdoor venue versus an indoor one. And also just the scale to know of what moments we want to capture for people.
Also, too, when I got married, it was 7 years ago, I don't think there was a lot of companies around like you.
There wasn't.
And I can tell you, I probably would have went in that direction But I just didn't because I wasn't. And I can tell you, like, even thinking back now, some of the stuff you're saying, and just a little idea for people who are listening. I loved what I did at my wedding. I hope that I can share this with the listeners. What I did is I had a table that was like, meet the wedding party.
Yes.
And so I had individual pictures of each person that's very special to us, and like a little write-up of like how we know them. And I put them on these little small easels. Sounds great, right? I'm sure you know where I'm going with this. Every easel on the table, because it's a tented wedding, was like flapped down. Like at the bottom of the night. Like I remember walking by the table and being like, oh, that was a great 4 hours of my life.
Right. You spend so much time and money into these pieces, and then when you get to be there on the day of or look back at your photos and have it not meet your expectations, it hurts. So that's one of the things I really like to help with our couples is they know that we've got their back. We're going to make sure that everything looks exactly as it should. We stay there up until right before that ceremony starts so that we know everything is set up and secured through the day. And there are even opportunities to repurpose things throughout the night. You can have something at your ceremony, and then later on it can be moved to the reception. So you're getting more out of those pieces too.
Yeah, it's funny because I keep going back now and thinking about some stuff I did at my wedding that I would love to share with the listeners. Another thing I had was like a little table where it was like, you know, Steve, who's my husband, Steve's favorite candy and Sarah's favorite candy, and then I had dog treats, right? And I had like these little signage.
Those little personalized touches really make your wedding feel like you, and you want your guests to leave that day feeling, that was so Sara and Steve. You can't put a price tag on that when it comes to the memories it gives you after the wedding of how you feel like you're really a part of that couple's special day.
Actually, Emily, what we should do is take a quick break, and then after the break, we should talk about some of these little pieces that can make a big impact on your wedding day. And we can kind of go over to some trends that you see.
Perfect. Sounds great.
I appreciate you being here. And hey, if you like what you're hearing, I encourage you to check out our website at sarahzarella.com. And don't forget, you can actually subscribe to this podcast wherever you're listening so you never miss an episode. And I would so appreciate if you left a fabulous review on Apple Podcasts. Even better, share it with a friend. It's a great way to show your support. And now, let's get back to the episode. Welcome back, podcast friends. So right before the break, we were talking with Emily a little bit about signage and putting a little personal touches to your wedding day, whether you do it yourself or you hire someone like Emily. And we went over a little bit of like the logistics behind creating such a wow effect to your wedding. But now, Emily, I kind of want to talk about those elements, what they are. So for our listeners, they can think about what can they bring to their wedding, and what are some like important areas to think about where you might need signage?
Sara, there's really three main areas that our couples seem to focus on when it comes to their signage. These are the things that are most important to them, and they're their welcome sign, either a seating chart or escort display, and their bar sign. And I think those three are the most important to them because they're the things your guests will see the most of on the day of. Your guests are first greeted by your welcome sign. Then once they're through the ceremony and they're into cocktail hour, that's usually where we have your install set up of your seating chart, your escort wall display, whatever it is you've decided to do is part of that cocktail hour. And that's where all of your guests go to mingle and see where they're sitting. Their next step after that seating chart is to stop at the bar and get their first drink for the night. And so those are usually the three main areas that our couples will put a little bit of extra love, whether it's having some custom signage there, adding florals to really take it to the next level, candles, things like that. But then they also opt for more of the useful side of signage as well.
So with those areas, what are some things that you've seen people do?
One of my favorite weddings this past year was back in May at Glen Manor House, and it was the first time we had a bride with an idea to kind of wrap florals around her bar sign. So we used one of our rental mirrors. It was gold, ornate, beautiful. The mirror actually said, "Till death do us party." And then she had her florist build a full install of florals kind of flowing around the sign and down the bar. And even as we were finishing setting up, I started to see the bridal party pointing over and looking at it. And if your bridal party is excited, you know your guests are going to be excited. So even looking back at the photos now, it's one of my favorite galleries to revisit as a vendor and look back at our weddings this year because it really created a moment for their guests that made them excited about the bar. It's something as simple as that you see at every wedding. They had an extra touch to it that made it stand apart.
That's really cute.
It was really fun.
What's some other little things that you've seen that you would love our listeners to think of adding to their wedding?
I'm starting to see more and more trends of personalized touches for your guests to really experience, whether it is place cards that they can take home as a memento of the day. Sometimes they're oyster shells, or we are starting to do more and more acrylic items, so engraved acrylic place cards that have that really extra detail that they can take home for later, but also things that are meaningful to your guests. So I'll put it out into the universe. One of my goals for this year is to actually make a kind of thank you card display for guests. I've seen some things around Pinterest where these couples will write personalized thank you notes for their guests on the day of, and then they can go and find on the display their card. And they get to open on the spot a message from the couple thanking them for being there. And it's something that those extra touches mean a lot to your guests, and they're the things that they remember and talk about in the weeks and years to come after your wedding.
That's so funny you say that. So not to keep bringing up my wedding, but I'm just, obviously I'm going to pull from something I know.
Yeah.
On my wedding day, I had pictures of the guest at each place setting, and they flipped it over, and Steve and I hand wrote why they're here and why they're so special to us.
And that's something that doesn't cost you a lot of money, but it makes such a big difference to your guests because they each feel like they are really a special person to be there on your day.
Speaking of that, though, you just threw that in the universe. So if any listeners want to be, part of Emily's project, call her. But I'm just curious, like, what trends did you see last year? Mm-hmm. And then what trends do you want to see more this year?
Yeah. So we're starting to see a lot of different shapes come through, whether they are arched signs. Sometimes it's full structures that maybe are offset from one another. Those bigger impact details we're starting to see more and more of, and they're our favorite thing to create and design because they're so different for each and every wedding. We're also seeing a lot of different guest book alternatives come through, whether it's the audio guest book that's become really popular, where guests can record a message to you to listen to in the years to come, or photo guest books where they have those instant cameras on display where people can stop and take photos. Those little touches, I think, are really fun for guests and kind of create a memory for them, and then something you get to look back on as well.
So I'm sure you're going to not like me for saying this, but I know that the mirrors are a trend right now. They've been pretty popular for a couple of years. Mm-hmm. As a photographer, little secret, we don't love them.
I know. I hear it all the time. They're difficult to photograph, even for me on the day of.
They really are. So, they're beautiful. They're beautiful. So when I say that we don't love them as a photographer, it has nothing to do with the aesthetics. It's just as a photographer, they're so hard to photograph.
Even older guests, I've heard from older guests that sometimes they have a hard time reading them.
Oh, really? I didn't know that.
It's something that they are beautiful, and if that's the look you like, you should absolutely go for it. But there are certainly other ways we can make it easier. Sometimes with our mirrors, we'll offer to do cardstock instead of putting maybe the writing directly on the mirror. Mm-hmm. We'll have cardstock with a beautiful wax seal that lists your guest names for your seating chart rather than having it on the mirror itself, and it's a little easier to photograph and easier for your guests to read as well.
That's so interesting. See, that's why it's so great to talk to someone like yourself, because you know that you hear and you see. Not only do we talk about the logistics of installation and ideas, but also too the impact that it happens with your guests and the interaction. So you're starting to see that it's hard for some people to read off the mirrors.
And even depending on the guest count, there are many of our couples opt to go and list their seating charts by table. And we'll do whatever you want us to do, but I will always, always, always recommend going in alphabetical order. As much as your guests will like to see the display that you've created or your vendor has created, they don't want to spend 20 minutes looking for their name. They want to find it quickly, appreciate the moment, and then move on to mix and mingle and drink and have a good time. That's what they're there for, to support you, not to search for their name through dozens of tables and other names.
Right. So I got another question. What is a little tip or thing that you saw at a wedding that you're like, ooh, that's good, someone should do that again? I know, I'm putting you on the spot. Yeah. I'm putting you on the spot, but I'm just thinking, you see it all. You just talked about the big items, right? But what is something so small that you're like, ooh, that was a good idea?
One of my favorite elements that I got to see a lot last year was people incorporating their pets into their signage, whether that's through adding their dog on the bar sign, or we've even actually named bars. I've done signage that has Bella's Bar if you wanted to bring your dog in that way. Or we just this past weekend, we had a wedding where their dog was really special to them. So not only did they create these custom wax seals with the dog on it for us to use on their seating chart display, put it on the mirror just like I was just talking about, But we also created personalized drink stirrers for them. They were all custom made on acrylic with the dog's face. So that way, when people go and get their drink, they can also grab a personalized drink stirrer just to add a little extra touch. And it's something that we're starting to see more and more of going into 2023.
That's really super cute.
Yeah, I don't personally make these wax stamps, but she had a company on Etsy make a wax stamp with her dog on it, had it shipped to my house. So we'll use it for her pieces. Another really popular thing we're seeing for 2023 are more of these photo op moments for your guests through custom backdrops. We have plans later this year for one that's actually going to be a beautiful all black wall, and the bottom corner is going to have the couple's name and a 3D sign, but the rest of it is blank. And other than a few florals, it's the perfect opportunity for your guests to go and get a really cool photo taken, whether it's by your photographer or if you have a photo booth set up. But it's just something to add a huge moment to the day that they look back on and say, wasn't that so cool?
I love that. I love that. We need to connect because I have a photo booth and we need to connect on that one.
Yeah,
See
I would
that?
love to.
That's such a cute idea. I am a sucker for something to give the guests for interacting with, So there you go. Couples getting married in 2023, a little cute idea. Also, too, I do like the idea of the installations for better impact of photos, obviously. Again, on the sweetheart table, behind the sweetheart table, a lot of things you can do to block eyesores. So if somebody who's listening walks into one of the rooms and there's just an area that they just don't love, for example, Dan and I have a wedding coming up, and where the bride is where the bride and groom is getting married, the bride has told us that there's a door, and I never would have noticed it, but there's just something to do with her. She just doesn't like it. She's like, if you can just try to minimize that door on my photos, right? But what about having something installed or a signage or something that goes in front of that you can't even see it?
Right. We had the same experience just a few months ago. One of our couples was really concerned about this huge silver air duct line that came out of the wall that was for the air conditioning, and she wanted something to cover that up. So initially at this venue, we don't normally put a seating chart there. That's where she wanted hers to be. And now when you look back at those photos, you don't see anything behind it. You just see this beautiful install with all their guest names.
I love that because there's so much stuff that you can do to bring your wedding to life in your space. So I guess kind of before we get into the wrap-up question would be to kind of wrap up this thought is when you walk into your wedding area, just look around and start.
Take pictures and take videos.
There you go. Yes.
Nothing makes my life easier than when a couple will send me a video or a picture of the space. And we're happy to go and do a site visit in person, too, to figure out all the logistics and find the best placement for things. And even just to measure the amount of area we're working with, whether it's ceiling height or just the area. But sending pictures and videos to your vendors is so helpful if they've never been to your venue before. Or if you're creating something from scratch. If you're having a tented wedding at home, taking as many pictures as you can during these plans when people come in and measure things. And there's no such thing as too much knowledge. And I think by helping yourself prepared and having your vendors prepared, it's only going to help you on the day of bring everything together.
And then, like you said, then go back into Pinterest and start from there.
Right.
So, Emily, with that said, it's time for the wrap-up question. I could be sitting here talking to you all day.
I know. I
could
talk about this forever.
What are some key points that couples should be considering when looking into signage companies versus doing it themselves?
I think the most important things are how much time you have to give to these projects. They do take a lot of time, and like we talked about, there are things you can make in advance, but a lot of it does have to be made in the final weeks up until the wedding. So you want to make sure that you have the time and the resources available to do them. The next most important thing is your venue. You have to make sure that your venue doesn't require outside insurance. You have to make sure that they have logistically what you need to set up and get these pieces in and out on the day of or the day after. My third and final suggestion is just to infuse you and your couple into these pieces. Whether you're having them made by a signage vendor or going the DIY route, it's so important that these pieces are representative of you and your wedding and your love story. Just recently, we had a wedding back in December, right before Christmas, where the couple loved Christmas, and deciding to have a winter wedding was special to them, and they ended up deciding to go with custom ornaments for each of their guests to take home, and we made those for them. And it was a beautiful display. Everything was adorned on this beautiful Christmas tree, and guests could take home an ornament to look back every Christmas at how they celebrated the holidays in 2022 with this couple. And it was just created a really special moment. And even afterwards, the thank you card I received from the bride thanking me for the time that we took to create these ornaments and all of her other pieces, and how much Christmas and these ornaments meant to them as a family made every single stress worth it of everything that we go through throughout the season.
Oh, I love that.
It was really special.
Well, thank you so much for joining me on this week's episode of Wedding Secrets Unveiled. You helped our listeners become one step closer to their journey of a stress-free wedding planning. Can you tell everybody where they could find you?
Yes, you can find us on Instagram at Something Borrowed Event Decor, and then on TikTok at Something Borrowed RI.
For our listeners, we will have Emily's information on our episode show notes, which you can find on our blog and also on our website, which is sarazarella.com/podcast. Well, thank you, Emily.
Thank you, Sara. It was so great to be here and get to see you again.
Thank you for listening to Wedding Secrets Unveiled. I appreciate you being here. And hey, if you enjoyed this episode, I want to tell you something. I encourage you to check out our website at sarazarella.com. We love photographing while having fun, of course. Check out our podcast page on our website for our show notes along with upcoming episodes with your local wedding experts. Listen in as we help you plan your epic event. And don't forget that you can actually subscribe to this podcast wherever you are listening so you never miss an episode. I would so appreciate if you left a review for us on Apple Podcasts. Even better, share it with a friend. It's a great way to show your support and let us know what you think. If you know any wedding experts that would like to be a guest, we have a link directly on our website where they can let us know. Thank you for listening.